Yes, everybody, Jim Zons. I notice is still not on, and I have 4:44. I'm going to give it about half a minute yet and then call a meeting to order and hope that Jim Zons is able to join us. So we're live stream right now. We'll begin the meeting in a very, very short time. All right. I will call the CRT Community Resources and Tourism Committee meeting to order. As you all know, this is a special called meeting for one purpose. Let the record first show that who is in attendance, all board members, other than at this point, Jim Zons, and if he reports later, we will see that. We also welcome our County Board Chair, David Bartlett, and our County Manager, Paul Miller, and Beta Haug, our CFO, and a special thank you again to you, Michelle, for taking the minutes. You have all gotten a lot of information from both Tom Quinn and a little bit from me over the past meeting, and to make sure when you read the agenda that we only have one issue to talk about tonight, and that is a consideration of action that we might take tonight for the Community Resources and Tourism Committee for any recommended use of ARPA funds. ARPA funds, again, remember the American Rescue Plan Act, that we might bring for rural broadband action. And we will take action. You received a recommended thank you to Supervisor Tom Quinn for sending everybody that along with all the other information. So I'm going to begin the meeting with just a little bit of background, and then I will be calling on Supervisor Tom Quinn and Corporation Counsel. We expect you to keep us on task here at all the time, so that what we're doing is simply to determine if we're taking action tonight regarding ARPA funds. If we do, then it will go on to the executive meeting, which is next Wednesday, 2 days from now, for them to consider. And then if that is done, it will go on to the full county board meeting at our Wednesday, February 16th meeting to see if they want to take any action on it. The reason for today's meeting is timeliness. The most recent, as you know, there's $100 million left of the $200 million that the state of Wisconsin put out for broadband expansion. And 100 million of it was used last fall. And now there's 100 million of it that it can be used or applied for with grants that must be in place by March 17th, the day after our next county board meeting. So we couldn't wait to get this done for our meeting on next Monday. It had to be done now to get this all done on a timely basis. So I hope you all understand that's the urgency and why I call this meeting. I had a nice conversation with our county manager, Paul Miller, before this, and he was very helpful in suggesting how we would go about this. And thank you, Paul, for that suggestion. And I immediately asked Michelle then to move ahead with this agenda and reached out to all of you. So we will proceed ahead with that in mind. So I have also reached out, Supervisor Quinn has reached out to 24/7 and has a lot of information from them. And I will call on him. Then I will share with you that I also reached out to Bloomer Telephone, who has a grant application in for the township of Colfax. And then I'll report to you when I reached out to Mosaic, who has a grant application in for the township of Grant. So I didn't think it was quite right if we only considered the grant applications of 24/7, because we need to look at the entire county if we're going to apply and get any ARP funds, because they would all qualify. So with that, I'm going to call on Chairman Supervisor Quinn for his update regarding his good meetings with 24/7. Oh, by the way, before Paul, I call on you. I do think maybe some of these ISP people might be listening online. Now, I'm not going to call on them, but they might be listening. Yes, I'm sorry, County Manager Paul Miller. Go ahead.
I know that there's not a specific item on the agenda for public comment, but I believe we did receive public comment. Krista, is that correct?
Oh,
Yes, they were sent to Michelle.
oh,
Michelle, perhaps Michelle can read.
We need
the
to do
written
that.
public comment.
thank you, Paul. Krista, I should have asked you earlier in the meeting. I neglected. Yes, Krista, do you have that public comment and would you share that with us at this time?
I have them and I will share. There is actually 3 of them. I will share them on my screen and read them.
Thank you.
The first is from Dave Hayden of N10251 County Road W in Colfax. And he says, first of all, I would like to commend the committee for considering using ARPA funds for rural broadband projects. I think it would be an excellent use of those funds to help internet service providers overcome the cost challenges that have extending high-speed internet service into rural areas. If it was cost effective for them, it would already be done. Both Eau Claire County and Chippewa County have committed ARPA funds to rural broadband projects, each using a different method. At the very least, I would suggest matching the amount of ARPA funds committed by the municipality. If other local partners or residents have contributed, I would strongly suggest matching those contributions as well. Lastly, especially in very rural areas, I would suggest conferring with the internet service provider to see more money is needed to make the project successful. Keep in mind that matching state grants, the impact of any county contribution could easily be doubled. Thank you for considering my comments. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. Then the next is from Terry Nichols, Town of Colfax. Last Friday, February 4th, the West Central Regional Broadband Alliance met via Zoom. It was stated that the State Broadband Office uses a point system when determining the status of a grant request. Part of this system is the partnership with an ISP and a local government entity, whether it be a township, county, municipality, or other local sources. So far, Dunn County is absent from the table when it comes to supplying dollars for broadband. All the benefits of robust broadband in rural areas of the state have been repeated over and over again for years. As a Dunn County resident, I truly hope Dunn County will step up to the plate and partner with local ISPs, whether it be ARPA funds or the pursuit of state broadband grant funding. And then the third is from James Ackerland, N9711 County Road M in Colfax. Is the town of Grant is in the process of completing our application to the state of Wisconsin to upgrade our low-speed internet to high speed. The present speed is very slow, some reception issues, limited number of people on at the same time. We have much more students and people working from home, and the list goes on. We have many letters from our residents expressing the need for improvements. With the next funding time coming up soon, time is of the essence. We just need to know if the county will allocate any funds to this project.
Thank you very much, Krista. Thank you very much for reading those letters. I neglected to call on you. Thank you. All right. Now, having heard that, we will move on with our reports first. And so I will, when Supervisor Quinn has finished his report and I have updated you on Bloomer Telephone and Mosaic, then we will open it up for discussion. Supervisor Quinn, you're on. You're muted.
Sorry. Thank
There
you,
you are.
Chairman Anderson. So I have, as the chairman noted, and the materials I've forwarded to the committee indicate, had been talking with folks over at 24/7 about the possibility of county action on the set of applications that are due on in March of 2022, not anything previously or forward, but focusing on this particular set of applications. They have 5 they are planning on putting in. I've forwarded the summary of those, which they graciously provided to the committee members. And I think you can see from that, and from their letter, that they are still in some level of negotiation with several of the towns about what exactly amount they intend to contribute. So my thinking has been that this is a unique opportunity and that we'll lose if we don't take advantage of it now. And if you look at the grants that are proposed, they do fill in an important area around Menominee, so-called donut hole, and then the town of Elk Mound or kind of Colfax rather, and and Elk Mound have been waiting for this service for a long time. So this is their last opportunity to get access to the state money, and I think we should really give strong consideration to it. I have to say that we can get into this in the discussion perhaps, but I'm ambivalent a little bit about the amounts. I think that while I think most of the ISPs have indicated they would like us to match the town contributions, I'm not so sure that that's necessary. I do think that, however, that a contribution, even a modest contribution from Dunn County to each of these projects would go, as was pointed out by some of the letters, would go a long way towards raising the points that they are eligible to receive and potentially securing all the funding. So, and I did, when we get to it, I did take the time to write a resolution. And so my initial thought was that we would be able to have applications from all the providers and we could make a decision at this meeting. But the chairman and in talking to the ISPs, I think they would, and I agree that it would be better for us to suggest a sum up to a certain amount for this particular funding period, March of 22. And then ask the board to approve that, along with an approval of assigning this committee the responsibility of working with the ISPs to determine the allocation, whatever that would be for those grants. And so the draft resolution that I provided, I think, tries to get at that. Probably needs some correction, but it's at least a way to frame the issue. So that's kind of where I'm at. I think this is a unique opportunity. I think also that this problem with broadband is going to be something, or the opportunity and problem with broadband is something we're going to be dealing with in the future. So while we may not be applying for matching grants from the state, the federal government is in the process right now of determining the process and the allocation method for the federal grants that have come through the infrastructure bill. And it's important to note there are still many gaps in our town, in our county, if we deal with these requests. And those gaps will need to be filled in a variety of ways. May not be as simple as the matching funds from the ISP providers here. And we should, I think, leave ourselves the option of being able to work creatively to work on those grants also. So that's my statement, Jim.
Yes, thank you very much, Supervisor Quinn. I know you've worked hard on this and we'll have more questions to ask you, I'm sure you, as we go on. I want to welcome Supervisor Jim Zonzin. Now I see he's online. So can you hear us okay, Jim?
Yes, I can.
Very, very good. Okay. Thank you. So before we go on now, Supervisor Tom, oh, Tom, you have more to add?
Just one thing I forgot to add, and that's that the other reason why I think it's timely to act on this particular request now is that we will be exploring some really tough questions with our overall budget. And the overall question of how we use our ARPA funds will happen in the context of those discussions. So this, to me, is an opportunity to, without getting into the larger question, which I think is an important discussion, to sort of pick a clear and manageable amount of money and a clear and important set of projects and make that decision without having to have a whole lot of preparatory debate inside of the committee and the board.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Tom. I'll kind of follow up with that because when I first talked to Tom and everything about the donut, as he called about those townships kind of around the city of Menominee, mostly served by 24/7, 5 different grant applications. And I said, well, Tom, we cannot forget Bloomer Telephone, who has a grant application in for the township of Colfax, and Mosaic, who has a grant application in for the township of Grant. So I have reached out to those 2 ISPs as well. And very briefly, I want to share with you that Bloomer, yes, is taken on. The township of Colfax has a grant in for $1.6 million, 1.6 million for the project. It'll almost cover all of the township of Colfax. The township of Colfax grant has committed all of their ARPA funds, $65,000 towards this project. And they intend to move ahead. As they told me at Bloomer Telephone, any amount that we might agree to donate shows when their application that not only the township, but Dunn County is a part of this application, and it would go a long ways in helping them get approval. Then I reached to Mosaic up there in your country, Dave. And of course, they're headquartered in Cameron, and they serve Chippewa, Barron, and Dunn County. And they now are taking over the township of Grant, just north of Colfax. At one time, Bloomer Telephone served all the township up to the Red Cedar River, and Mosaic turned everything on the west side of the Red Cedar River. And now, through an agreement, Mosaic is taking on all of the township of Grant. So when I talked to them, their grant is also for 1.6 million in the township of Grant. And all of the ARPA funds for the township of Grant is committed toward this grant proposal. And when I talked to them, they were so excited because Marshfield Clinic has committed $10,000 to this project, $10,000. And there's been $3,000 of personal donations for this one grant in the township of Grant. These people, they tell me at Mosaic, are the most enthusiastic people they've ever dealt with in trying to get this grant approved for the township of Grant, because if they get that done, it'll pretty well service the township of Grant. So I bring that to you because we're looking at whatever funds we commit, that we would then find a way to provide maybe some funds toward each one of these, the 5 grants of 24/7, the 1 grant of Mosaic in the town of Grant, and the 1 grant for Bloomer Telephone in the township of Colfax. Now, that's now, as Supervisor Quinn told you, for this grant coming up right now, and applying to get some of that $100 million of the state of Wisconsin. So folks, this is where we're faced right now. And now I will open it up for any questions from any member of the committee. Certainly you, County Board Chairman Bartlett, I know your concerns, which we want to hear again. And to Paul Miller, if any of you, I welcome questions or comments you might make. Raise your hand so I can see you and I'll call on you. Jim Johns, I can't see your hand, so you'll have to speak up. But The big question, I think, as Supervisor Quinn says, do you want to apply for any ARPA grants from the 8.8 million that Dunn County received? Remember, 4.4 million we've already received, and we've spent much of that in our this year's budget for highways. And Chairman Bartlett can speak to that. I will certainly entertain him. It would be matter of us determining if we want to do it first. And then if we do, how much money would we go to request in our resolution for? Supervisor Bjork, go ahead.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you. And thank you, Tom, also for the work that you've done on it. And I am highly supportive of as many dollars as the county can put towards the project. I'd be in favor of. The only question I have is there a term or a ratio that they use for the amount of miles or the amount of miles of cable that's plowed, and how it relate to the number of services that could be on that routing? So I mean, is Grant, large miles and few patrons, is 24/7 more patrons or potential customers per mile, or is there a term for that or a ratio that's given?
You want to take that, Supervisor Quinn? Or I'll answer it too from my perspective. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure that I have the answer to that, Larry, but I mean, the grant proposal, the information that 24/7 provided kind of alludes to a lot of the stuff that's in the grant proposal, and they do get into that specifically. I'm not sure how the criteria measure just amount of customers per mile or whatever. I don't know the answer to that, but I think that all of these grants clearly qualify under the criteria that the program has for the type of service that is a high priority.
Thank you, Tom. And Larry, I'll take a shot at it. As you well know, if you live in the town of Otter Creek, the population density per mile is pretty sparse as compared to if you live in my township, the township of Menominee. So, we think that all of these ISPs are saying, we're going to try to serve, but every mile of fiber, they tell me costs anywhere from 30 to maybe 40,000 or more, depending upon the train and where they have to go to bury that fiber. And so we haven't, even though in the application, when you look at it, they're talking about how many people they're serving. And I talked to Jim Kuslich at 24/7 and the folks at Bloomer Telephone and the folks up at Mosaic, and they're all saying, we're not just going to pick and choose. There was a company way back when it was strictly for profit, and they took the highly populated area and forgot the rest of us. Well, we don't want that. Everybody in our county is important when they live in a rural area. And so, Larry, I don't know if I have any better answer than Tom Quinn had either, but that's the way I look at it. Okay, Larry? One more.
I was just thinking, Jim, going back to other programs, and, this a little far afield, but I remember when Conservation Reserve came in, where it titled fragile soils for conservation and then for habitat we put some land into that did not qualify on just the slopes or that normally would go into it, but they had a factor in there that if you planted trees to it to habitat, you got sort of a bonus. Well, right. I always bring that up because we can't just go with the high population areas. We do have to send out there into the rural areas, and there isn't a township around there that I wouldn't think would feel that they could use a few more residents in their township, and having broadband available two areas that development could happen. So I mean, I just think it's good for everybody to spread that money as far as you can into the rural areas. And if there is a formula, I would think you would get a kick up, because you would be a rural area. You are servicing rural areas, all of the people, and that's the only point that I'd have on the darn thing. But I am 100% behind you guys, and man, thanks for the good work you did on it.
Well, thank you, Larry. I want to hear from Ann Vogel and Jim Zons too. It isn't just a Tom Quinn and Jim Anderson show here. And then I'm going to call on Chairman Bartlett. We're certainly going to hear from him. Ann, you got your hand up. Go ahead, Ann.
Yeah, I really appreciate all the work you did, and I totally support broadband. Did Bloomer and Mosaic say how many households they were going to be serving with their 2 grants? Do you know, Jim?
You mean how many households each one of the grant will service? Yes, that is in the application, that every one of them of their 5 for 24/7, and each one of them in Grant and town of Colfax. And so that they do show those people, number of people served in the application. Now, how much weight that has on it, if you're asking that, I don't know. But yes, and we will get all that information if we know how much money we have when we turn around and then try to pass that on to the IPSs. If we have any money to do it, Ann. I don't know if I answered your question, but obviously, go ahead.
I was just, because 24/7, we saw the number. So I was just curious if you had gotten that information. But so is 24/7 going to be asking for more, or just the 2 amounts to match the county or the townships? Does anyone know that?
Tom, you go ahead and answer it.
Yeah, here's what I understand is that they are in the process, based on their letter, which is one of the attachments that I sent earlier today. And when you look at that, it notes that they are working with the remaining 3 additional towns that they had to try and arrange a match from those towns. They aren't committed. They aren't saying they've got that secured. I know they're talking with some town board chairs about it. So I would expect that they're hoping to be able to get a match from the towns. Now, it's important to understand that they would like us to match the towns, but there's no requirement that we match the towns. When you look at the rating criteria from a PSC, it looks to me like, as I think was stated earlier, any contribution towards it, like the multiple, and especially the number of contributions. So what they're doing up in Grant Township because they have multiple local units contributing, that weighs fairly highly. So
Right.
Whatever amount I think they're looking to get more match from the towns, but either way, a match from us would help the grant, or a contribution from us would help the grant.
Thank you, Tom. And I'll follow up a little bit. Remember when Tom is talking about match, that doesn't mean 100% match of if a township gives all of their ARPA funds, as in, I just learned the town of Stanton matched as putting in all of their ARPA funds. Now, if a township contributes 65,000, there's no way we're going to match 65,000. However, the important thing we're saying to all of you is that if Dunn County can give any amount, we are then players, and they in our application says, yes, the township, county of Dunn, and in the case of town of Grant, Marshfield Clinic, and $3,000 in donation from private citizens, all of that helps for them to get the grant approved. And good question. Anything else? Yes.
Yeah, one more, thank you. I saw that some of them said it was the last mile, and I'm trying to remember, and I tried to look through my notes from our workshop, if that meant that it wasn't leaving any gaps, like that they're reaching where coverage like ends in another township. And I can't remember if that's what last mile meant, because I'd hate that these grants would leave any gaps. If we could like ask for a little bit more, we could help a little bit to not leave any gaps. But that whole mapping thing, I think, is still.
Sure. Tom, you have your hand up. Go
Well,
ahead.
if we do authorize money and we ask for applications, we'll get a copy of the application that
Right.
the ISPs are sending to the PSC, and that will have a coverage map in there. My understanding is that in each case, the grants that they're submitting are basically covering, for the most part, covering the rest of the territory that they have put in there. I think last mile refers to the connection from the sort of main cable network directly to the home, to the house, to the customer. That's the most expensive part of it in a way. So
That's right. Good answer, Tom. That is what I would have said. And does that answer your question? Well, good question. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very
You know,
much.
Yeah, no, I can't see Jim Zons if he's got his hand up at all. Jim, anything you?
Well, all I can add to it is just that, yeah, I think this is good work, and I really support the idea of that Dunn County should contribute something and show that we have some skin in the game toward these grants, because again, it will help get hopefully get those approved. The county's done fairly well with some of these grants in the past, but as you can see by the interest in the town of Grant, boy, if you're not served by internet, you will do almost anything to get it.
Yeah.
And as I walked around my district and talked to a lot of people as I was getting nomination papers signed, that was the number one topic of conversation for a number of people in my particular district, just because part of it falls within that donut area on like County Road B and between Menominee and Colfax. So yeah, anything that we can do towards that, in however amount whatever we can come up with, that we can devote toward it, I think we should support it.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it. Well, Dave Bartlett, we need to hear from our county board chair. Go ahead, Dave.
I want to thank Tom for all the work he's done on this. It's great. And I think broadband is very important. It's a good, we need it. We just have to make the tough decisions where to spend our money. We have a capital plan that we've looked at borrowing $3 million a year for 5 years. We have also in that capital plan, I believe there's over $1 million in borrowing for the highway department again. Our highway department funds are depleted, our fund balance. We put a little bit in there from solid waste and recycling, but there isn't enough in there. There's still a need for highway equipment. I realize that it isn't that part of the problem with the highway department funding has been that they've spent more than it has been, that they've been spending more than they've been taking in. And they've evidently showed revenue that probably didn't exist. But also part of the problem with what happened with the highway department has been what the county board has done in the last number of years towards their budget. I think, and I don't have the papers in front of me, but I believe that Dustin told me that we were $4 million higher in their budget than we were this last year, or than we were in 2020, a number of years ago. And we've cut and cut and cut. And all that cutting has left a big deficit in highway, and their needs haven't gone away. We're going to get a report from the highway committee this week, Wednesday, on the age of the equipment and the trucks. But some of them are getting older, and we've spent a lot of money on equipment the last few years, but there's a ways to go. There's still a need. And I guess what I'm talking about, and the bottom line is, I'm not against giving money to broadband. I think it's a very worthy place to spend money. But if we're going to do that, we have to realize that we're putting it on the taxpayers' property tax. Because if we want to put $500,000 in broadband, that's going to be $500,000 more dollars we're going to have to borrow in the end to meet our budget. For that $3 million capital plan, if we decided we'll take $500,000 out of that and put towards broadband, if we decide we want to put $500,000 in broadband, we could have taken $3 million and paid and not borrowed any money this next year for that capital plan. So the bottom line is, any money you spend that you don't have to, you're putting it on the taxpayers' back on property tax. That's all I'm okay with spending it. And if the majority wants to spend it, I think it's a very worthy thing to spend it on. We definitely need broadband in our county. I realize that. But I just want everybody to realize what's really happening when we spend $1 on broadband.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Bartlett. I appreciate that. We need to be aware of all of this, and I from my perspective, I'm simply like to know if it goes to the executive board, they're going to look at it, and you know, I'm kind of curious to how the full county board would vote on this after hearing what you just had to say, because maybe they aren't all aware of this. Yeah, because you certainly are stating the facts as they are. Again, I guess I'm thinking when this the American Rescue Plan Act came into place, it was pretty well clear right away that they wanted much of the money they thought to be spent for broadband in the rural areas, not necessarily to balance your budget, but the county board needs to look at that. You're right. And I only have one more meeting as chairman of the CR&T, and you'll have a new chairman of this committee and maybe a new committee Chairman Bartley might appoint. But I would like to see us at least get to the point where where we would approve a resolution doing something so that Dunn County is a player and not, and even, it doesn't have to be $500,000, Chairman Bartlett, but some amount of money. And then we can proceed from there. That's my position anyway. And I open up to hear from our county manager, Paul Miller, too. Do you have some comments, Paul?
Not at this time. Thank you.
Not at this time, Paul. Oh, okay. Well, let me back it up then. Going around one more time here. We've been, Tom and I have been talking a lot about the perspectives of who we're serving and what it would be. And well, when we talk to these ISPs, remember, this is the round that comes up right now in March. And again, I would say if you do approve the resolution or something like that, that Chairman Quinn sent out to each one of you to read with an opening about how many dollars then you wanted to request. It doesn't mean we will get it. It means this committee is suggesting that that's the amount of money that we hope we could get from ARPA. And of course, it would come then before the full board. Corporation Council, are we in line with everything as you see it right now? Nick?
I think so. I mean, so you have a couple of options, it seems to me. The first one would be to create a procedure for receiving applications, reviewing them and approving them with a budget that's set by the county board, and a budget, if you will. And the other option, which I think is kind of the direction that you're pursuing at this time, is you have some specific applications in mind and you're looking to, you have some specific asks that you're aware of, you know the amounts. And, you know, if you want to approve the release of enough funds or authorize the release of enough funds to address the projects that that are going to be covered by the grant application period, which I understand from Supervisor Quinn's email is, I think March 17th is when the
March 17th, yeah.
Yeah. So you could approve an expenditure of a set amount or up to a set amount for applications received by that deadline. And then if you want to consider further applications, you could do a little more refined, a little more detailed procedural approach to it, like designating a committee or some county staff to conduct the reviews to make sure that the projects or the service providers meet the technical requirements for eligibility for expenditures of funds, and go from there. So, I mean, I think if your proposal is to take the total of what's projected to be asked for in the next, 5 weeks, you could cover that with a resolution authorizing it. My suggestion would be that there at least still be somebody, perhaps the county manager or finance director, just to ensure that all of the information, all of the sort of eligibility requirements are met by the applicant. I'm sure they will be, but it would be a good practice. And then, when the applications come, they can be processed rather quickly rather than, kind of as in an ad hoc way.
Yes. Council Corporate, Nick, you're absolutely, you're way ahead of me. I guess I was going to wait on that until I even thought if this committee was willing to even make such a resolution and talk about doing it before I was going to start worrying about the details, but we would certainly have to do all that. You're right. Yes, Larry, you got your hand up. Go ahead.
Chairman, I think we should go back and remember what the providers were telling us. is that, if Dunn County, has a piece as far as the providers going after, aren't they going after state funds? And the more cooperation they have
Right.
behind them. So, I don't think, the dollar value, I have no idea how to figure out how many dollars that should go into it. But if we can't enhance the people that are going for a request, the providers, I think it's a mistake. If you got, let's give them as a stronger position as we can to acquire additional funds.
Yes, thank you, thank you. We've had excellent discussion. I want to make sure every supervisor had an opportunity to ask questions. You did see a resolution that Tom Quinn sent to everybody that he is kind of proposing with a blank space for the dollar amount. So there's no use talking, in my opinion, about anything unless this committee even wants to pass such a resolution that we do seek ARPA funds, because if we don't, we might as well adjourn the meeting. It's all over. If we do, then we get that done, and then we can talk about the dollar amount. And I have a lot of good ideas about how we don't match these big sums, but even a small amount, like Larry said, to each one of them would show Dunn County participation. So that's what I think we need to do. Yes, Paul, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Chairman Anderson. I wanted to listen to what everybody had to say and attempt to distill it. I am struck by the timeline, the restricted timeline that Supervisor Quinn pointed out is part of this. And I'm also struck by Chairman Bartlett's comments about our needs elsewhere in the budget. It seems to me that this committee may wish to do a resolution that builds on what Supervisor Quinn provided, but includes a process going forward that would say, so it would not only say that the county hereby dedicates up to or not exceeding fill in the blank, but further designates the CR&T committee as the committee responsible for evaluating applications for said money and making a decision on the disbursement to specific projects. I say this because we do have a March 17 deadline, and if we make anything more expensive or take more time trying to figure out how that money is dispersed, I'm afraid we will run out of time.
Right.
So if this committee is inclined to recommend to the county board that some portion of the ARPA dollars be dedicated to broadband, I think the resolution needs to do more than say it should dedicate a portion. I think it needs to say that further step about how it will be evaluated and dispersed along the lines of what Nick Lang suggested in terms of process. I would think the easiest would be the committee doing it. The final thing I will observe in response to Chairman Bartlett's observations, we were allocated $8.8 million in ARPA funds. We have dedicated $3.2 million, means we have $5.6 million remaining. It is absolutely the case that the county board adopted a CIP, a capital improvement plan that called for borrowing $3 million. If the county board were to decide that it wanted to, instead of borrowing next year $3 million, use $3 million ARPA, that leaves $2.6 million available. There are equipment purchases, as Chairman Bartlett said, that we need to consider at Highway as well. So you want to make sure there's still some funds there. What I'm doing in that calculation in my mind is working my way down to a dollar figure. And it does seem to me that this committee could recommend between $300,000 and $500,000 of ARPA monies as part of that resolution, not more than three to five, whatever this committee agreed on, without compromising the kinds of considerations that Chairman Bartlett brought up about Highway, because those we would still potentially, if the county board chooses, be able to spend $3 million of ARPA instead of borrowing $3 million, and have $2 million plus potentially for equipment purchases for immediate needs at the Highway Department.
Thank you, Paul, very much. I appreciate those comments. Tom, you had your hand up. Go ahead. You're muted.
I just wouldn't, at some point, if we get to the point of resolution, the sample resolution that I offered to the committee included both elements that Mr. Miller and Mr. Lang mentioned. So it may be that we can use that language because it does address those. I really appreciate Paul's comments. I think that it would be better if we, rather than saying a sum like 300,000 or 400,000, which is not what the ISPs, even in their largest ask, are asking for right now, that we focus more on this as a unique. I'm not opposed to that. I just don't know if the county board is ready to make that kind of allocation. I also don't know whether there are other projects similar to this that are also important that we would preclude funding from if we asked the board for a $400,000 broadband allocation. So I'm more leaning towards a smaller request that's focused on these particular grant applications because they're so timely. And I don't think that would have to be more than $100,000 myself. And one last thing, if I could. I mean, so when you look at these, I mean, these are business propositions that the ISPs are offering, and they expect to get their money back, and they're getting a significant subsidy to provide a expensive project that would be harder to get their money back if they had to pay the whole thing. Well, there's a substantial subsidy that's going into it, and I would like to get as much as they can, I'm sure, but we can only give as much as we can, as we feel comfortable doing. And I think that isn't quite $400,000 for these projects right now.
Thank you, Tom. Anybody else on the committee, or are we ready to move for something, or do you want to drop it? Any action? Then of course it's no action. The issue is dropped. If there is intended, then I will entertain a motion. So,
Well, Mr. Chair?
yes, Tom.
I don't want to dominate the discussion, but I'd be interested to know what other members of the committee would think about an amount of say $75,000 to $100,000.
Anybody comment on that of the committee? Let's hear from you. Yes, Ann.
So I was trying to do some math or calculations. I don't know if these are the only 3 applications we're gonna get this round, or if there's still some out there in the works.
There'll be 7 applications. Look, we can count on that. Whether the ISPs will ask for a contribution from us for each of them, we don't know yet, but I would assume they might. So
I meant the 3 providers. Maybe I was unclear. So it was like 8.7 million. So I don't know if we do a percentage or an amount per person they're reaching. So that would be like 87,000 if we did like 1%. But we may not use it all depending on, the applications or how that would work. But yeah, so I'm not quite sure how to do the calculation, but so somewhere between 75 and 100, yes, would kind of be 1% for the projects.
Ann, I thank you. Larry, you had your hand up.
Well, I kind of look at it this way. You have to remember where the money comes from. The money comes from taxpayers, whether it's a grant or whether it's whatever it is. I mean, it's money that is collected from the taxpayers and the community. And I see more value in turning more money back to the community, and they receive broadband, then they receive newer trucks or equipment. And, you know, I mean, I certainly don't know what needs to be done for newer trucks and newer equipment. When I just look at it as what people get back from government, from what they pay into government. Everybody pays into government. And what do I get? Well, I get my road plowed. I get health and human services stuff. I get sheriff's department. I get, you know, you go down the list. But if it means that I may have broadband so my kids can be on an equal plane with the other kids in the school, or if it means that I can communicate with whatever I want to via my computer and broadband, I think that's worthwhile too. It's sort of like you've always, you know, in your own businesses and your own farms or houses or whatever it is, you know, there's always something that needs to be replaced. It doesn't make a difference if it's a water heater or a tractor or a water fountain for the livestock. Something's always needs to be fixed. But if you got a chance to come along and do something over and above just the fixing, I think that's what we ought to do. I mean, I would support this to $200,000, but leave with the idea that if there's other providers coming in that need a little boost and a little help making it pay, I'm all for it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Larry, for those comments very much. I have one closing, but Tom, did you have your hand up?
No, I'll let other people talk first.
Okay. Jim Zons, do you have I can't see your picture. Do you have any comments?
I guess my only comment is yeah, trying to figure out and determine how we put some amount toward it. Maybe it's something where we don't get as complicated, but would get close to the same amount where we do, you know, like in the grand scheme of things, a token amount of $1,000 towards each grant, with if there are 7 different grant applications that are up for, and are all of these grant applications, I've seen the one with the email with all the ones from 24/7, and then I understand there's Mosaic as well. Are they all from phone cooperatives, or is there any other entities that are applying for them in this round?
Well, good question, Jim. Mosaic is a co-op, 24/7. They're Westcom is a co-op. 24/7 is kind of affiliate, so they're not legally a co-op as I understand it. They were at one time, but if the grants have nothing to do whether you're a co-op or a private corporation, whether you can get the funds or not. But
no, I just want to know.
Yeah, Bloomer Telephone and they're our co-ops. So, you know, they operate under
part of it from my background is just that, you know, the mission of these cooperatives is to basically serve their members, and they're not for-profit corporations. So I feel better supporting their mission, because their mission is somewhat parallel to our mission as serving, you know, Dunn County residents. So in kind of along those lines, that's why I want to be supportive, because it's a lot easier to be supportive because they're doing this as, you know, part of their cooperative mission. So, I mean, as far as an amount, like I said, that's just to kind of make it easy and showing like an equal amount. I guess I'm kind of leaning towards doing like $1,000 towards each one of those applications. So that's where I sit.
Okay, Supervisor Jans, I appreciate those comments and clarification regarding the co-ops. Well, we've beat this to death. I would like to thank all of you very much. I tend to think that $1,000 is I'm sorry, Jim. I think that's almost an insult, $1,000 for each grant. I certainly would not want to go that low. If it's not going to be that low, that's a total of $7,000. I wouldn't support that because I just don't understand it. If you want to, and if you, I didn't go into detail, Ann, about these other things because I had no idea whether this committee was even going to want to apply for ARPA funds. And if so, then how much? And I kind of left it up to this meeting to do that. And then we'll, with Corporation Council and everything else, if you do vote for it, then we'll find a good way to be equitable. By equitable, I mean, so that each grant would get what I call an equitable or percentage, small percentage it might be, of the amount that the townships contributed. And finally, I think it would go a long way toward developing better public relationships with our townships. Not that it's bad now, but they would say, yes, Dunn County is working with us and all the townships to be able to help get a broadband grant approval. And that would be mine. And I tend to feel that that total amount should be somewhere in the $200,000 to $250,000. Whoa, at one time I was thinking it was going to be a whole lot more. So I have come way down, but I can accept 200 to 250,000, but personally not much less. Let's close this up pretty soon. Tom Quinn, go ahead.
Well, if we were to give 250,000, allocate 250,000, are you suggesting that that would all go towards the current round of applications?
That is correct.
And that would be substantial.
There will be no more this year. This is all part of the $100 million that the state has made available.
Right.
And these 7 grants in March will be applying. So it'd be all of that for this year, Tom.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have to say that I probably wouldn't support that. I think it's not necessary for the county to spend its money on projects that are going to happen and make sense, economic sense, with the use of state funds. And our role primarily is to provide a meaningful amount of demonstrated support. I think $1,000 is not sufficient for that, but I don't think $250,000 spread over 3 or 4 or 5 proposals.
7.
Well, maybe 7, I guess. Yeah. So 7. I think that would not be, myself, I don't think it's necessary. And I worry that there are other projects in the county, and I can think of some, that it would be good to spend similar amounts of money on, that we would foreclose the opportunity to do so if we, at this point, allocated all of that money to broadband. I'm not saying we couldn't do it in the future, but right now, I think it would be a mistake. 2, I think it would be sort of a surprise to spring that on the full county board. There's a pretty good chance they might not support it. So I would, if I were to make a motion, I would make the motion to be somewhere in the area of $75,000.
Okay, I'm willing to entertain them. Oh, Corporation Council, Nick.
I just wanted to reinforce what Supervisor Quinn is getting at. The correspondence that we've received is right now sort of conceptually, they're saying they're looking for the county to contribute a portion that's equal to the town contribution. And of the 5 towns that are listed, Dunn, O'Galley, Lucas, Menominee, and Sherman, only Dunn and Menominee have town matches. The total amount of that is $50,538. The other towns, the proposed, I wouldn't call it a budget, but a worksheet or whatever, a projection, are indicating a $0 contribution from both the town and the county. That's Sherman, Lucas, and O'Galley. And so it underscores and reinforces the suggestion that the amount could probably be modest, because the time for these applications is going to come to a close fairly soon, and they're not looking for large sums of money. They've already kind of specified approximately what it is that they're hoping to get.
Thank you, Nick. Appreciate it. I did talk to 24/7 today, and they indicated that, did you mention the town of Sherman at all, Nick?
Yes.
He told me they were committed 100% of their ARPA funds, according to 24/7.
Yes. Sherman, I guess I had the wrong one.
Yeah. You said
that's
Stanton. Sherman has now come along and they are committed to 100%. Now, let me say, that's not really important, but I agree with you. Let's cut the amount down. I don't really care what it is. I would hope wouldn't just be $1,000 per grant, but some amount if this committee wants to do it. That's number one. And number two, then, like Supervisor Quinn says, 75 grand, 100 grand, whatever, we'll find a way then to distribute it equitably between these 7 grants. Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
Well, I would make a motion. I sympathize with the desire to provide more funds, and I think we should utilize as much money, ARPA and other funds as we can. But I think for right now, I would say that if the committee asked the executive committee and the board to approve, let's say $100,000, that would be a first step for us, and a significant first step, and it would assure us that we have enough to provide meaningful amounts to whatever towns are contributing to the project this time.
You want to make that motion, Tom?
I do. I want to move us ahead. So I'll make a motion that we set the amount at 100,000.
And did you second that, Larry? With
I
your
would-
hand up?
I agree
Okay.
with Tom. We've got to get this through a few more steps than just us today.
Thank you. Thank you. We have a motion now for discussion. County Board Chair David Bartley, you had your hand up. Go ahead.
No, I'll talk after you vote on the motion.
Oh, okay. Well, other supervisors, you've heard the motion. Is it clear to everybody? Are there any questions? Are you ready to vote?
If I could just clear up the motion.
Michelle, would you repeat the motion, Tom Quinn?
This is only, go ahead, Michelle. I'm sorry.
I said, did you want to use the language that you had in the resolution?
I think right now, this is simply a motion to fill in the blank of the amount. So my motion is that the amount be no more than $100,000 towards the grants that are due in the 2022 cycle.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you. Is that clear, Michelle?
Yes.
Is that clear to all the committee members, what you're going to be voting on in a minute? Clear to everybody? Speak now. No questions? Are you ready to vote then? I will be calling a question in a minute here, but don't want to cut any discussion short. All right, all in favor of the motion of Tom Quinn to request ARPA funds up to $100,000. Is that correct, Tom?
Correct.
All in favor, please raise your hand so I can see them. Oh, it's unanimous. All 5 of us voted yes. Thank you. The motion is carried, so there's no defeat. Now, Chairman Bartlett, you saw the motion. Your comments.
Well, I guess I was thinking that the object of putting money in this when they put the application is to make the application better and hopefully it gets picked for a grant.
Right.
And so I was thinking that if it did go through, and it did, when you were talking about how to distribute the money, you may want to consider offering money to the grants that don't have town support, or they don't have any money left to support it. Because that's the real object of what you're doing here. And I agree, it doesn't have to be a big amount, but I think showing support is what you're all about, trying to get the grant. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Well, that's a very good point, Chairman Bartlett. Very good point. As I see it right now, what we will be doing is bringing this to your executive meeting next Wednesday, and we will see how the other members of the executive committee feel. And if approved and everything, then we can find out how the full county board feels about this. And Chairman Bartlett, wouldn't we not at that time, maybe the discussion could be brought up just like you said, so that we would make sure that got, if this is approved, now it isn't approved yet, but if it does get approved by the full county board, then we would certainly have to consider what you just said. That's only fair. Is that okay, Chairman Bartlett?
Yes.
All right. Well, you people, Ann Vogel, go ahead, Ann.
So do we have to approve the whole resolution to get sent to executive board, or just that bottom part with the number? I don't know.
I think the next step here is to form a resolution that can go to the executive committee for action or possible action. And they have a right to change the amount and to not forward it. It's up to them. So I did, as you all noticed, I did send a draft resolution that it could, and I don't know that has to be the whole thing, or whether the simple, whereas the therefore on the bottom is all that's needed. But I wonder if Michelle could, if it's okay, Mr. Chairman, excuse me, if Michelle could put that up on the screen for people to see.
Are you able to, Michelle, put that motion up on the screen, the resolution?
So and Mr. Lang can tell us whether we need all of this or not. But my thought was that this would be coming to the executive, which we have a better opportunity for discussion on. And then the executive would be sending this on to with a recommendation, perhaps, to the county board. And so this would be the first time the county board sees something. And I thought it would make sense to do it in the form of a resolution that, first of all, laid out the situation that we're approaching them with, namely that we've received federal funding and these funds are allowed to be used for expansion of broadband, that several local ISPs are intending to submit requests. And the deadline for these applications is March 17th, 2002, that the towns that will be served by these projects are committing a share of their ARPA funds towards local match. Not all of them are, but may all be by the time the grants are completed. Next, that the commitment of even a modest amount of ARPA funds by Dunn County will demonstrate broader community support and raise the competitive scores of these applications. And then finally, that the county may consider the merits of additional ARPA allocations in the future as opportunities are presented. This specific opportunity will be lost, however, if funds are not committed by the March deadline. And then therefore, the CRT committee recommends that the Dunn County Board commit an amount of up to $100,000 in ARPA funds to support broadband expansion grants submitted by local ISPs during the March 2020 PSC grant cycle. The committee further recommends that the CRT committee be authorized to review applications from county ISPs for this grant cycle and establish county contribution allocations for each grant request up to the amount contained, up to the combined amount authorized by the board. That may not be the right resolution, or it may not all be needed, but I think that last part, I think I'll offer that as a resolution, as a motion for our consideration.
I've
Thank you,
actually
Tom.
I've actually been editing that. I've added a little language, but I kept everything that you added there. I think it's important from a factual standpoint. The draft that I have also has basically direction and authorization to the Community Resources and Tourism Committee to develop procedures for review and to review applications to determine the dispersal and make sure that the grant applicants meet the technical requirements for disbursement of or use of ARPA funds for broadband projects. And then it then further directs county staff, appropriate county staff, to take any and all actions necessary to carry out the directives in the resolution.
Yes, thank you, Nick. Is that clear for Ann now? Does that answer your question that you brought up? Does it answer the questions of the rest of the committee? Because I think, Tom, this looks good to me too. So Corporation Council, you've reviewed it. You're saying it meets
Yeah.
all.
As long as,
okay.
as long as the committee is okay conceptually with the resolved clauses that I've recited, which is a designation of $100,000. If the state of Wisconsin awards the grants, the county would provide matching funds. If not, if the state doesn't award the grants, the funds would not be dispersed.
Right.
The CRT committee develop procedures for review and dispersal, and then review applications to make sure they comply with their requirements. And then last, that the appropriate county staff is directed to take any and all actions necessary to carry out the directives contained in the resolution. And then a lot of what Supervisor Quinn has in the document that you're seeing up on the screen, I placed in the background information section at the bottom.
Well, thank you, Nick. That clears it up. And Tom, so seeing this,
I would move the resolution as amended by Corporate Council.
thank you. You've heard the motion. You'll hear a second. Seconded by Supervisor Bjork. All right, any discussion on the motion to approve this resolution? If you're not, are you ready to vote? All in favor of approval of the resolution that we just saw, raise your hand so I can count. 1, 2, 3, 4. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, everybody. That covers that. So this will be moved on, Chairman Bartlett, to our executive meeting at, I think, am I correct, next Wednesday?
Nope.
At which time it can be reviewed, right, Chairman Bartlett?
2 days.
Yes.
What's that, Nick?
2 days from now.
2 days from today, next Wednesday. And then depending upon executive committee action, depending upon what they do with it, it would be my hope that it would go to the full county board at our full board meeting on February 16th. So you all, wow, great discussion. And you, Tom Quinn, you know, your hard work. And I know we had Jim Kuslich from 24/7 in a few times months ago to talk about this. I think they're going to realize that Dunn County wants to be a part of this. So our discussion was great. And we will, unless there's no further business, I just wanted to announce that we will have a CR&T, our regular meeting next Monday. We do not have to talk about broadband at that meeting because that was the purpose here. But if any of you, and especially you, Jim Zons, have anything you wanted to the agenda, Michelle and I will be putting that together tomorrow afternoon for our CR&T meeting next Monday. We will have a report from our extension people and our tourism people at that meeting. And so I invite any of you, if there's anything you want on the agenda, either notify Michelle or myself by tomorrow afternoon. I won't get at it till about 2 o'clock. So folks, this has been much appreciated for all of your hard work, especially to you, Supervisor Quinn, for reaching out to all these. And I hope that anybody listening in as our ISP realizes the great care that we've taken. We've listened to everybody, and I hope this will move along. So thank you to everybody, and you, Michelle, for your very meticulous taking of minutes and everything. And as always, we're reported very well in the Courier, the Glenwood City paper. Leanne Ralph, she does a good job of reporting. So if you don't know what went on in a meeting, you can usually read it in her paper, in that paper. Paul Miller, thank you for your comments, and to everybody else, again, the Corporation Council. Nothing further going on. I will declare this